Just so people know, and some of you know this, some of you don't, the Soviet Union experience is something that's near and dear to me because I studied in the Soviet Union, traveled extensively throughout the country when it was the Soviet Republic of Georgia and the Soviet Republic of Armenia and Kazakhstan, um, obviously Leningrad, and spent an entire semester in Moscow in 1980. So I was very inundated with a lot of the Soviet propaganda, a lot of the things that were just background noise but helped shape narratives. So I was very familiar with it. I was also very familiar and became quite close to a number of refusnik families in Moscow. Refusniks were Jews who had applied to emigrate to Israel and were refused. That's why they would call them refusniks. And so I understood the Soviet attitude towards Israel. I understood how they manipulated things. I don't claim to have had any inside knowledge of it, but this is all very near and something I've thought about a lot over the years about how so much of what I see going on now is so clearly manipulated and so clearly pushing themes that have been around for decades that emanated either from the Soviet Union or the Soviet bloc. So I'm very interested in this.
Welcome and good evening to The Truth is Simple. This is Dave Corm, your host. It is Tuesday, May 7th, 2024, episode 15, season 2. This week we're going to talk about what's going on in our colleges and universities with all these Palestinian uprisings. Uprising protests, right, as they call them. To me, they're just riots. And they try to stay within our laws to a certain extent. They've gotten really good at doing riots now that make it look like, they're on the right side of things, but they're really not. Especially when you bring tents and you plop it on somebody's property, private property, or you bring in these pieces of plywood, sheets of plywood, and try to make a barrier from the police. It's kind of goofy, right? How they're doing these things. Who's paying for the tents? Who's paying for the plywood? Students don't have any money, so it's got to be coming from somewhere. Who's it coming from? Where is it? Who's supporting these things? How is the message? How is the message getting out there to do these? Um, who are the instigators of this whole thing? What relations do they have to foreign governments? Who's paying for this stuff? Is it domestic people, people out of our country? Do outsiders really have the right of free speech? I would say no. I would say no, they really don't. Just because you're here on a student visa doesn't mean you have the right to protest. You're here at the niceness of the American people to go to our colleges and universities. Doesn't mean you have the right to speak up and say anything. You're not American. You're not a citizen. What gives you the right to speak here? Go back to your country and let's see them throw your butt in jail for saying what you said here in the United States. So I say you to play the video right front. What does that have to do with the Soviet Union, which has been gone since, 1987? Is it really gone? Who's running Russia right now? Vladimir Putin was a big person in, I forget what the KGB. That's it. It's not a radio station in San Diego anymore. The KGB. It's basically the Soviet police, the strong arm of the Soviet Union that put people in jail and controlled it and put propaganda out there to control the people and create the ways people think. Well, a lot of the stuff you're seeing today, and a lot of the organizations that are out there, and there are a lot of organizations whose base comes from, or their basis, or their background, their funding, and who and what they are is not American. It comes from other parts of the world, whether it's Russia, which wouldn't surprise me, that remnants of the KGB or methods of that were established by the KGB in the Soviet Union are not being utilized today. They were pretty persuasive and worked back then. What makes you think they're not going to work today? Because it's something that's 20, 30, 40 years old? Yeah, it still works. The Chinese that are in the very background, they're like the little guys putting the plugs and pulling the little strings in the background. Oh, now you're bringing in China? This can't be real. It all happens for a reason. Why do you think China told Russia to go into the Ukraine while they were kind of hanging back and waiting for Taiwan at the same time? If Russia would have been successful, I think, in Ukraine pretty fast, they would have pulled the trigger most likely on Taiwan by now. But because they're still fighting in Russia in the Ukraine for that space, China said, well, we're going to just, time is on our side. We're just going to take a little time and see how this all pans out. So that's where we are. And in the meantime, we get this thing popping up in Israel, right? The timing for this was like perfect. A lot of I think the Saudi Arabia and a couple of other Arab countries were about to formalize real, true relations with Israel. And all of a sudden, you get this attack from Hamas across the border, killing 1,200 plus Israelis and Americans and a couple other nationalities that were there, and kidnapping the same people back into Gaza. And then all of a sudden, all that stops. The next day, which I kind of did 2 videos. If you want to go back to my season 1, episode 6, whose side are we on? Israel or Hamas's? I still don't know right now, because we're a split nation. Are we really that split? I would say 70 to 80% of us are on the right side of things, not just the politically, but on the right side of things, supporting Israel, while there's some wobblers in the middle, maybe 10% wobblers and 20% that don't have a freaking clue what's going on in the world. They're just thinking, because of the propaganda from the propaganda media out there, that Israel's in the wrong and Palestine, and that happens to be a lot of our kids that are going to colleges and universities because they're being brainwashed through our elementary and middle schools, and then it's being completed in the colleges and universities. I also, season 1, episode 8, Gaza refugees, illegal migrants, and so forth. If you didn't hear, Biden's talking about sending some planes over, 1, 2, 10, 20, I don't know how many, and bringing Gaza refugees here. Again, after I talked about that, I think it was last October or November, and they talked about it, and it kind of died, and now it's come back. Why are we going to bring terrorists here? The Arab countries won't take these people. Why are we going to take them? They've been indoctrinated into propaganda by Hamas in the schools. Their kids are, hate to say it, little terrorists. They think Israel needs to be destroyed, and the United States is no better than Israel. And we're going to bring them in and let them come here and mix among our population and our kids and so forth. We're just inviting what happened to Israel on October 7th here in the United States. Enough said about that. Let's focus back on our colleges and universities. Well, as I started to investigate and think about what I was going to put together for this podcast, it kind of like all my investigations. The next thing I know, I got all these different little tentacles going out in all these different little locations, and I kind of brought it back in and narrowed it down a little bit. We just watched that video about propaganda and so forth, about Zionism and anti-Jewish things in the Soviet Union. How is that relevant today? Because it's happening. The same techniques that were used there are being used today, mostly by, hate to say it, countries in the Middle East, primarily probably Iran, with some help and assistance by some other ones that are out there that are of like-mindedness to destroy the United States, or at least remove it from its standing and to create turmoil and political dissent here in the United States. They're vested in it. They're trying to do it. Iran is not our friend. They just are not our friend. And, we've done things. We've taken their money, which Biden decided to give it back, which then they distributed to organizations like Hezbollah and Hamas and all those folks along the border in Yemen and stuff to attack ships going through the Red Sea and to attack Israel and so forth. They've used that money for those purposes to do that. And we're foolish and stupid to think that they wouldn't do that because they did the same thing in the past. It's just what Iran does. It's not so much the people of Iran. You could probably think that 50 to 80% of the Iranians probably would rather have a democratic type system there where they had a say and had freedom. But because it's a theocracy, and a very strict theocracy following Shia law, which we'll talk about maybe next week, the two different sects of Islam, Sunni versus Shia. I was going to talk about it in this episode, but it's too much to handle all in one episode. So we're going to stay focused on what's going on with the colleges. How are these kids buying tents? How are they buying these big pieces of plywood to create walls around them? What are they doing going into these buildings and so forth and so on? I've got a couple of videos. We're going to hit some of the character crazy stuff. They're asking for requests. I don't know who these kids are or where they think they come from, but they definitely think they are gifted some kind of free this or free that based upon who they are. Not very much thinking and thought going through some of this stuff when they do stuff. It just tells you how juvenile they are and how much they've thought through the process, or they're just what you would call the pawns, chessboard, thinking of a pawn, and the king and all the other pieces on a chessboard. They are just the pawns of something bigger than them, and they've jumped on a bandwagon, and now they got to suffer the consequences of poor decisions on their part because they decided to follow something that was not well thought out, or nobody really cared about them, other than just getting them there to be pawns in the middle of everything. So let's look at the website or the video we just looked at. I got another clip I want to show real quick on that too. So bring that up. I think it's that one. Is that what I want? I don't think so. Let's actually bring up the website. Is what I'll do. And I'm gonna kind of shrink her down. Shrink her down and bring this up. So as I was doing my research, I kind of came across this website, legalinsurrectionfoundation.org. And I thought, oh no, here's another leftist website. I gotta go through. And, I actually like finding leftist stuff from leftist sources. Because when I find stuff from like Fox and I don't know, Breitbart and what other right-leaning news media are out there, people are saying, well, you're just grabbing stuff from the right and you never really think about the left, and therefore your stuff is just garbage and so forth. And on this instance, I thought, here we go. What right-wing organization is going to call itself legalinsurrectionfoundation.org? What right organization is going to do that? I said, none. But I was wrong. I'm not always right. So let's look at this page right here. So if you hit that events page right here, right up here on the top, I think you can see it where I'm kind of highlighting with my mouse. If you click on that, it's going to take you to this page. It takes too long to load, so I'm just going to bring the page up. And the video we were just watching is not there. They might have moved it. Let's see. I might actually just click on that. Let's go back and click on it and see what happens. Events. Like I said, it takes too long to load. So, it is there. All right. So, if you can see this one right here, this is the one that I just took the video. You just saw that little clip. I'm going to show a little more piece of that. I'll let you listen to the person that's talking. Her name is Isabella Tabanuski or something like that. Um, so I'll let you listen to that, and she's going to explain a little bit about some stuff about the Soviet Union and how their propaganda against the Jews is kind of being used today. It's very similar to what the Soviet Union, the communists used, but it's, you know, while you could say that countries from the Middle East are not in hard communists, they are theocracies, at least Iran is. And so that means a religious leader is the supreme commander, the one or running the country, basically. It's basically a dictatorship, a religious dictatorship. And so, without further ado, let's watch this if it pops up. If I can get it to pop up. It's giving me a big, like, death, death circle here.
Having me. I'm really delighted and thank you for your very warm words. I very much appreciate it. So I want to start by talking a little bit about where we are right now in the United States, because the relevance of what I'm going to say is very much, it's very much here, it's very much present. It's not just historical information. So I'm sure that most of your viewers and people in our audience understand and know that there's been an incredible spike of anti-Semitism since October 7th. In the first 2 months since October 7th, the ADL recorded over 2,000 anti-Semitic incidents, which is much more than it recorded during any 2 month period since it first began tracking the statistics in 1979. So there was like a 400% increase year over year. Physical assaults, incidents of vandalism, incidents of verbal and written harassment, and a very big percentage of it was really around the anti-Zionist anti-Semitism. And this is really what we're talking about today, right? And the kind of anti-Semitism that's based and grounded in what's called anti-Zionism and specific kind of forms of demonization of the state of Israel. So we'll get into more details about it. A lot of it came from the left. And I think today we see really a fusion of all forms of anti-Semitism together, but a lot of it most immediately came from the left. And it was a moment of awakening for many American Jews, who of course are primarily in the majority liberal, and who suddenly have found themselves betrayed by their progressive allies. So the first sparrow there was the rally that Democratic Socialists of America held on Sunday, October 8th in the New York Times Square. On October 8th, now we have to remember, Israelis were still fighting for their lives, right? There were still Hamas terrorists in the Israeli territory. The bodies of murdered Israelis were not yet cold, right? Just like 1,200 Israelis had been murdered and hundreds were kidnapped. And here were the Democratic Socialists of America marching through New York City, not just in support of Palestinians, but specifically in support of the atrocities that Hamas had perpetrated. And the language of it, we have to really point out that the point here is the language that's being used, right? There were speakers talking about how our people, Palestinian people, are colonized and ethnically cleansed, and we uphold the right of our people to resist colonialism and imperialism and to return to our land by any means necessary, and justifying Hamas's deeds as resistance, as though they were sort of fighters for justice. By any means necessary, right? This already, at that time on October 8th, we already
Yeah. Resistance is futile, so they're the Borg. Anyway, you're a Star Trek fan. Yeah, so if you listen to this a little bit farther, she digs into that. It's very interesting that um, that the day after, and I remember that because when I did the vlog, my first vlog about, which side are we on, I took that into kind of mindset and consideration. I really didn't dig into it like she did here as to its organization and everything, because that's one thing we've kind of learned here in the United States. The left is ready to pounce and jump on just about any little thing that pops up. It's like they have scripts and stuff already made and set up for a lot of these things. They either They have planned them in and of themselves, and therefore they are waiting for a trigger to set off a response. Like when police supposedly inappropriately or appropriately kills a black person, how those things just kind of burst out there almost spontaneously before the real news even hits the airways. It's like it's already a racist thing, and how the police or the organization was bad about what they did, and that it's racist and it's abusive and it's let's defund them and all this other stuff. It just pops out. It's like automatic. That's the same thing that happened here, which kind of means either they were prepared for it or knew it was coming, and or yeah, or everything was triggered. It's like, we did the task. Now we need to get out there with our marketing team and start saving us and flipping this around onto the other side. And the left is really good at that. That's what they do. And they've been doing it here in the United States for 20 years plus. We've kind of taken this word Islamophobia and have been told if you think anything negatively about a person of Islamic or Arab descent, you're basically an Islamophobiast. You're racist. You can't think of things like that because you're just going to be a racist, and you don't understand who and what they are, where they come from. I'm not an Islamophobiast. I have friends that are Arabs, and they're funny, and I like them, and sometimes I dislike them, just like they like and dislike me. I don't care. It goes back to for me anyway, Martin Luther King, don't judge a person on the color of their skin, but on the content of their character. And that's what I do. I don't care what skin color you are, but that's how the left portrays us. You're a racist, you're a demon, you hate people, and so forth. You're a terrorist because of this or because of that. Just because I'm white. A white guy, I'm a terrorist and I hate all people. Well, if you watch some of my vlogs and listen to where I grew up and how I came about and so forth and so on, you would probably see that this guy and my family background, you'd say that this guy is probably the least racist guy you'd ever meet in your life. And I am. I am the least racist guy you're ever going to meet in your life. But the left has us so twisted, and you're this and you're that and you're this and they're that. They have their keywords and everything all set up and established. Well, if you were to watch the rest of this video, which I think you should, I'm going to kind of pop that back up here in a second.
Had videos of...
Pop that back up here in a second so you can, again, go to the website. I think it's here, yeah. So if you go to the webpage, bring it back up. If you go to the webpage here, and this is the link right here, the center video. That's the video that we're watching right now. If you bring that up, you will see. You can see the rest of the video. I watched the one here on the right last night. It was very good as well. And the one on the left, that actually just happened today. I watched it this morning. It was recorded, so that will probably pop up soon where you can actually watch that as well. Who's funding the anti-Israeli campus protests? We're going to talk about that, and I don't know if it's gonna surprise you or not. It probably won't. But some of the stuff is people right in this country, the rich people in the country. She's talking. If you were listening to her, she was talking about how the Jewish people, who are primarily liberals, I guess, I don't know why. Seems to me if you were Jewish, you'd probably be a little more conservative about things after all the things that have happened to the Jewish people in the past. If you're liberal, you kind of accept other people's opinions and policies and possibly your own self-destruction. We're going to talk about George Soros, who is Jewish by descent, but it would be hard for me to believe that the guy is actually a practicing Jew because of all the things he's doing to destroy not only the United States, but the Jewish people in and of itself. So it's hard to believe that, like I said, Jewish descent doesn't mean he's a Jew. He just has the descent. But anyway, so you can watch the videos here. I think they're very good. Found out that this is actually kind of a right-leaning website, even though, legalinsurrectionfoundation.org does not sound like one. So you never know what you're going to get. We're going to talk about some of the other organizations that are out there. There's actually one called the Jewish Something Foundation, which has nothing to do with Jewish people. It's a left-leaning, probably Arab or Muslim organization funded by those same terrorist organizations on that side. And I'm going to tell you why they're terrorists in a few minutes. So we looked at that. We're not going to look at that today. Difference between the different sects of Islam. We're going to talk about that probably in the future, maybe next week. Oh, so a couple weeks back, when I brought up in one of my vlogs or posts, we talked about racism, and I forget which one it was. It was 2 weeks ago. I think it was episode 13. I think season 2, episode 13. We brought up the what we call the Durban Declaration that was sponsored by the United Nations in Durban, South Africa, I believe is where it was. 20 years, how that was to quell and solve all racism in the world. And as I was doing my research, it popped up in my face again. And I said, what? What does the Durban Declaration and racism have to do with the protests and the stuff happening in the United States and all over the world with Palestine and all that? Well, as I was digging into it, this Durban Declaration has its roots based in Tehran, Iran, the capital of Iran. And it's like, wow. So the Iranians, Iran, had its way with the United Nations, who's supposed to be globally for all the world. And if you look at this 20 years after racism and so forth, how it was supposed to quell racism throughout the world, it was decided that this organization, the Durban Declaration, was not going to be really focused on through governments. It was going to be focused through NGOs, and those are non-governmental organizations. So all these organizations you see, like the ACLU and Tides and Open Society and all these left-wing organizations, maybe some right-wing ones too, harder to find, but maybe some out there, are the organizations that were going to bring and free us from all this racism. The only problem is this is coming from Iran, which is the global leader of terror throughout the world, paying and supplying and supporting all these global terrorists throughout the world. Iran. And how is Iran going to clean up terrorist stuff when they're the number one purveyor of all this stuff? Why would they want to clean it up? So something that was created, its roots were created in Tehran, Iran, brought to Durban to create this Durban Declaration to stop racism. But I come to find out that a lot of the protests that were happening in Durban while this declaration and this meeting was happening were anti-Semitic and Zionist riots and so forth happening there against Israel. So Durban, they're trying to clean up racism, but yet they're being totally racist against the Jewish community, Zionists and anti-Semitic leanings. So now you know why the Durban Declaration failed and why these NGOs, non-governmental organizations, Tides Foundation, like I said, all these different organizations, Open Society Organization, and so forth, which I'll bring up a list for you. And this is just a short list. All of these are leftist organizations. And, whoa, that wasn't supposed to happen. All these are leftist organizations. Bring that back up. Good. And flop here too. There. Bring that up for you. So that's all stuff we're going to go through, guys, right there. So the left's very short list of organizations destroying America's educational institutions, the Constitution, rules of law, politics, government coherence, judicial integrity, freedom of religion, morals, values, and culture. So all these organizations on the left. I highlighted some in purple here. Why? Good question. Because as I did a little more research, I found out that these were a lot of the organizations at the upper echelon, with the exception of maybe the Students for Justice in Palestine, which is towards the bottom there, and the National Students for Justice in Palestine, which are more at the grassroots level in the schools and colleges and universities. The other ones are really the financial supporters of these organizations that you're seeing a lot of these demonstrations and riots happening on our college campuses. The other ones are the supporters. They're the ones that are financing the money for these groups and these organizations. At least that's from what I've reviewed and found here from the video you just watched, what I watched today through that other video and presentation, which is on that website, about who's funding these organizations or these college campus, I'll call them riots. You can call them protests if you want. They're riots. Who's funding these things? And then you can search through Open Society. That's a George Soros. If you don't know George Soros, in my opinion, he's no different than Joseph Stalin, no different than Adolf Hitler, no different than Mao Zedong. A lot of the organizations and groups he's given money to for supposedly creating free, open societies throughout the world have really been the cause of closing down societies, putting people in jail and in prison, and he's the main cause of it. We're going to talk about George Soros here. Soros Network, same with that organization. The Rockefeller Brothers Fund. Wow, that sounds very American, and it has been, but they've all gone to the left. Tides Foundation, which is also funded by George Soros. Westpac Foundation, we already just talked about Students for Palestine. The National Students for Justice in Palestine, same thing. So there's each college, university, a lot of colleges and universities have the Students for Justice in Palestine at their school, and then there's a national organization. And here's the organization, which sounds like it's a Jewish one, Jewish Voice for Peace, but it has nothing to do with the Jewish community other than it's trying to oppress the Jewish community. It's like the website I just showed you, that I thought at the beginning with the videos was an organization, a left-wing organization, and it wasn't. It's kind of a right-wing organization. But the Jewish Voice here, it sounds like that should be supportive Jewish people, but it's not. It's an Arab, it's a Muslim type organization that opposes the Jewish state of Israel and supports anti-Semitism. That's who they are. Hate to say it, but they are. And then we have all these other ones, and this is just a short list. Foundation for Promote an Open Society. Americans, the ACLU. They originally were an organization for good. They are no longer an organization of good. The NAACP, same thing. Used to be an organization of good, for good, but it is not that anymore. Planned Parenthood, how did that get on there? Well, Planned Parenthood supports some of these organizations as well as itself. It's a far left organization. Robin Hood Foundation, sounds like you're giving from the rich and giving to the poor. Really? Not really. Students for a Democratic Society, nothing less democratic than that organization. League for Industrial Democracy. Black Lives Matter. Oh, Black Lives Matter, yeah. They're the same. They're a leftist group. Democracy Alliance, the Black Lives Matter want to destroy America, basically. Colors of Change, demos, never heard of those. So we're done, right? Nope, there's more. Georgia Budget and Policy Institute. Now you can figure out how the elections are getting screwed in Georgia, right there. Economic Analysis and Research Organization, taking in all the numbers so they could figure out how they could go and better spend their money towards their goals and ideas. American Federation of Labor Congress of Industrial Organization, the AFL-CIO. It's a leftist organization. Used to be for good, not anymore. 1630 Fund, which is a big supporter of a lot of these organizations. It's huge. They get a ton of money in and they send it out to all these other micro groups that are out here on this list and not on this list. So this is just a short list, guys. There you go. All have web links and everything. So if you want, you can go back and stop my video and you can look at all these. You can bring them up and you can research them for yourself. I have all the links right here for you to start your investigation. That's the thing about my website. It's just not me giving you information about what I think. This is what Dave says. No, it has nothing to really do with me. It's about educating you so you can find the information to find out the truth for yourself. Liberal dark money behemoth funneled more than $400 million. Really? Let me see if I can bring that up. See if I can bring that up so you can see it. There you go. $400 million in 2020. Look at that. It's the 1630 Fund, which we were just talking about. Aided Democrats' efforts to unseat the then President Donald Trump, the Republicans, and the Senate majority. This is political. This is not a right-wing organization that's talking about all this stuff. This is a left-wing organization. So, information like this, you can see. Open Society for Foundations, George Soros, $17 million in grants to this organization in and of itself. This is all out there for you, folks. You just have to find it and figure it out for yourself. Legalization, pay for legalization in Montana of marijuana and Colorado. So $400 million. Dark money. What do we mean by dark money? Well, a lot of these political organizations, which we kind of just had up there a few minutes ago for you, most of them are 501c corporations. Meaning, so they basically are taxed, or not taxed, but they're legitimate in that have a filing and they show that they're a legitimate corporation. They have all the they meet all the requirements and guidelines of the federal government, basically, for running and operating, for collecting these funds and disseminating it. A lot of them, if you go to those websites, they linked and they show like sometimes a list of people they give money to, organizations they give money to, they send it down to. Well, you start getting to some of these black ones where they are not really legitimate. They're organizations that might be at the school level, campus level, city level, or whatever, but they are not legally recognized by the government. Meaning they are not a 501c corporation. They don't have a business license in the city, state, or county that they are in. They are a pop-up fly-by-night organization of me and 10 of my buddies. And this is our idea and our goal. We apply to one of these organizations that has the money, and they say, yeah, we agree with that. Here's $10,000. Here's $100,000. Here's 200. Here's $1 million. And so that money is sent to these organizations, and then it just disappears because they are not tracked in any means, manner, or way. That's what they call about black money. A lot of the money right now going to a lot of these groups at the level, at these colleges and universities, might be, and most likely are, these black level organizations that are quasi there, but are fly by night. They're here today, gone tomorrow, and disappear. So the money disappears with them. All right? So that's what they're talking about, kind of dark money, fly by night organizations that are there, not really there. They pop up and might be there for a short time, and then all of a sudden they're gone. And there's no way of tracking it. the major corporation or 501 corporation might say, we sent it to these guys, but when the FBI, the IRS, or whatever shows up to wherever they sent it to, there's nobody there. It's gone. It's gone. It doesn't exist anymore. All right, so let's look at George Soros. Why? I don't know, because he, like I said, he is a main instigator of a lot of this stuff. I just said a few minutes ago that he's on the level of Mao Zedong. He's on the level of, in my opinion, Joseph Stalin, where they did these things. And here's George right here. That's not him. That's him. There you go. George Soros, right here. He's 91 years old. As I said, he comes from Jewish descent, born in Hungary right before World War II. You can kind of read a little bit of his history here. He is what I would call, he's a billionaire for sure. He was at a hedge fund. He went to college and university in the UK, and then moved to the United States, became a United States citizen, naturalized citizen. He made $1 billion by basically collapsing the pound. It's the money of the UK through the Bank of England. So that happened in '92, and ever since then, he's kind of started some foundations. I kind of told about that a little bit. Let's see if it comes down here. Political involvement, so you can kind of read that a little bit right here. Open secrets. Donates to various groups. Here it says, what, 23,581,000. It's actually more than that. Is what he's donated. A lot of these organizations that you see were some of these DAs like Gascon in Los Angeles, the one that was in San Francisco that kind of got booted out and replaced, the one in Chicago, the one Alvin Bragg in New York City, all supported through George Soros, through various entities that he's given money to, or his companies have given money to, his Open Society organization has given money to. So you're welcome to go look at that and check him out. Do a really good background check. It sounds like he's a major contributor to great things in the world, but in reality, he's not. He's a domestic terrorist. $220 million into a racially equity push. So a lot of this DEI stuff you see, diversity, equity, and inclusion in our colleges and universities, this guy's responsible for that to a major extent, in the money he gives into a lot of these organizations and so forth. Let's see the next one. Okay, let's look at Politico, which is not a right-wing newspaper. Pro-Palestine protesters are backed by a surprising source of Biden's biggest donors. Does that surprise you? A lot of these people that Democratic circles, Rockefeller Organization, Pritzker, Soros, all these donors that give to the Democratic Party. George Soros gives all his money for elections to the Democrats. They're not Democrats, folks. If you are a Democrat, which I was one back in the early 80s, got out of high school, found out, hey, parents, what political party we're Democrats? Okay, I'm going to be a Democrat, because they didn't teach me anything about politics in high school. Maybe they do more today than they did back then. But I didn't know any better, so I became a Democrat. We were probably with the highest inflation at that time in our history, except for back when the Great Depression hit. Late 70s, and Ronald Reagan came into office and turned everything around, and all of a sudden I became a Republican. When I moved from the city I was in to the next county, I had to re-register, so I re-registered as a Republican. If you're a Democrat now, it's The Democratic Party is not your friend. They are not there for you. If you're one of those old Democrats and you just feel like you got to stick with it, stay Democrat, but stop voting for these people because they're killing you. They're killing everybody around you, literally, with the price of inflation, the cost of everything going up. They may have given you free money, or they may still be giving you some free money, but as soon as power usually consolidates, money dries up and disappears, and guess who they cut off? You. They cut off all your money. You're not going to have it. So stop supporting these people. They are not your friend. And they don't really care about Americans. Look at all the people they're letting across our southern border. In my estimation, they're saying, 10 million now, but it's probably closer to 17 to 20 million by this time. People that have crossed our border and come into this country illegally. Oh, so you can kind of look through this ad. It talks about funding and where it's all coming from. All these people are funding these riots and these things on, look at Hillary Clinton, Barack Obama. So would that surprise you? Where the money's coming from and who these people are supporting? These people own these Democratic persons, supposedly persons, and these elected officials. They own them. They own them. They keep giving them money. How much money have you given to their campaigns? $10? Nothing. They don't represent you. They're gonna do whatever they can to get reelected again, and it's these organizations that are giving them money. And that's what's happening. So here's a little bit about Columbia University. All right. So here you go. Information like that. You guys need to dig this stuff up. Here's that organization we talked about a few minutes ago, Jewish Voice for Peace. Their website. Urgent, demand a ceasefire now. Really? I think the Jewish nation, the country of Israel, was attacked. No different than a Pearl Harbor attack, no different than a 9/11 attack on their country by Hamas from Gaza. They have every right to go in there and totally wipe out Hamas, no matter where they hide. And Hamas uses their people as shields. They've always done that. So you're blaming the Israelis for defending themselves, but yet Hamas is the ones that are doing it. And beyond Hamas, it's Iran that's giving Hamas funding. The people that run the government of Hamas on the Gaza Strip, they're all in a foreign country, living the high life. Why are they not in the Gaza Strip, taking care of their people? They don't care about them. And if you're a supporter of that, you're just as much to blame, because you're just perpetuating future stuff in the future for attacks on Israel. Not on our dime. Stop supporting the schools and campuses and all this stuff. So, it looks on its face like it's a Jewish-backed organization, and it's not. Who's behind the pro-Palestinian protests, disrupting on Biden's campaign events, blocking streets? Information here. NBC News. This lady right here, she's a terrorist. Why? Nardine Kiswani, founder and chair of Within Our Lifetime. Oh, it sounds like a very pleasant, nice, let's go grow some vegetables out in the garden, until you read about who she is and what she is. And you figure out she's one of those supporters of From the River to the Sea. She is an Islamist terrorist. That's what she is. Don't beat around the bush. It's not Islamophobia. She's telling you who and what she is. If you're not going to take her word for it, then you're stupid. She's an she's not. She is a terrorist. They make her and portray her to make her look like she's some nice, soft, cushy little person that's doing the right thing, and she's not. Wake up, America. CARE. If you have not heard about CARE, bam, CARE. I'll bring up a website here. They talk about CARE right here. This is California CARE website, I think. Yeah. But CARE has their own website, big organization. where they're supposed to be doing things for Islamic American relations. These people are terrorists. And right here on this own sheet, this shows why they are. Camera report, Council of American Islamic Relations, Civil Rights, or are they extremism? It talks about right here, they are supposedly like the Islamic equivalent of the NAACP or the ADL. And they're representing them in the right way. Except for right here, you could see where these people were prosecuted for giving money to Hamas and Hezbollah, collecting money here in the United States and sending it to them. They supposedly aren't doing that anymore. Right. The money comes in, they send it to these other organizations who then, black organizations like we just talked about a minute ago, fly-by-night organizations, who then send that money to these Hamas and Hezbollah. Hello, follow the money. It's there. You can find it. I'm no doubt you can find it if somebody really wanted to look. But our politicians, our president, a lot of our Congress people who are communist far left persons, the Justice Department, the FBI have all been totally laid to waste. There is no rule of law in those organizations anymore. The FBI is corrupt. It needs to be abolished. The Department of Justice, the same thing, needs to be abolished and reformulated. So anyway, here you go. CARE. That's who they are. They're terrorists. Don't let CARE off the hook. Here you go. An incident here where a female, Arab female, Muslim, Islamophobia, takes a gun into a synagogue in Texas. She's caught in prison, and she blames the Jewish people for her fate. She's the one that decided to go there to kill and to kidnap Jewish people in their synagogue, which lead us to this. California Cares calls on the Biden administration to condemn Israel attack on the Al-Aqsa Ramadan worshippers, April 6, 2023. So if you were to read this and go through each of it, it's very one-sided. It doesn't tell you anything about why Israel put people or sent in the military or sent in the police. It doesn't tell you. And let's look at one more propaganda website. The Communist News Network, CNN. Israel police storm the mosque for a second time on Wednesday. You can read through it yourself. All one-sided, making Israel look bad. All of it. There's no ever any other side of the story. There's never any other side of the story. When you look at these propagandist news media, they are not news. They're opinion and propagandists. Let's look at a third one, BBC. Here's something that's a little more center. And they tell you why the police went in there. They tell you why. Here, right here. Am I actually seeing that? Yes. Right here, you kind of see the mosque sitting on this little area right here. Right? What they don't tell you through CARE, what they don't tell you on CNN is this is the old section of the Temple of Jerusalem, the most sacred spot for the Jewish people in the whole world. This is the temple right here, the Temple Mount in Jerusalem, and they built a mosque on top of it when the mosque was destroyed many hundreds, thousands of years ago now. They built a mosque on top of it. So what they were doing is the Muslims were going to sacrifice an animal, and then they were going to burn it, I believe, right there, as a religious thing for their Muslim religion. And to the Jewish people, that's blasphemy. You can't do that. You can't do that. This is one of the top 3 sacred places for Muslims in the world, right here, Dome of the Rock. But this whole area is the Jewish temple. That's the temple. That's the most sacred place in all of Judaism. That's why the Jewish police went there. Are you kidding me? Why won't they put that on CNN? Why won't they put that on the CARE website? Why? Right? Wikipedia, I don't usually like to use that, but I kind of did a word search or whatever. Islamic organizations based in the United States. Here are a few, just right here. I didn't research or look at really any of these. I didn't have the time. But do your own research. Go into some of these. Look and see who they are, what they're doing, what their thoughts are. What are they supporting out there? Look at it. We are being inundated by outside sources into our country that are trying to persuade us that we're all Islamophobics. And we're not. It's not okay. This is the United States. This is our country. But yet they're bringing stuff in and they're trying to persuade us of who and what we are. All right, I'm not going to really show this because I will probably get censored by YouTube. They'll cut my video out. But I just wanted to show you this page. Look, it's on YouTube. It's free. Anybody can get to it. A few weeks back, I mean a few more than that, I had a clip from I think it was what? Not Netflix. Is it Netflix? HBO, where I had Bill Maher on, and I showed a free video that you can watch on YouTube, and they said, sorry, you can't watch that, or you can't take that clip. So I'm going to do it here, but this is an SNL clip that came, I think, from last week or 2 weeks ago, where they had the issue with Columbia. This guy plays like he's a parent of a student at Columbia, and it's okay for all you other Colombians to reject and to students at Columbia to go support Palestinian protests in Hamas, but my student, my daughter, my kid better not be at those things because I'm paying $60,000 a year for her to go to college, and you guys can send you, and that's so left wing. They make a spoof out of it. It's funny. I kind of laughed at it a little bit, but it's true. It's true. It's satire, but it is absolutely true. We send our kids to these colleges and our universities. We allow them to propagandize and to make our kids into something other than what they were when we had them at our house. And we say nothing. We do nothing. We just allow it to happen. It's got to stop, folks. So go watch this. It's pretty funny. But at the same time, it's serious. It's serious. A couple more here. This little young lady who I think is a student at a university here, which I guess this is probably Columbia. The students took over this building. If you remember, they went in and had to remove them. The police did a couple days after, or the day after, the superintendent or the dean of the school told them, you either stop or we're going to kick you out of school. And they did nothing. But she thinks she's owed something. A protester is owed. The school needs to bring her food and her friends' food for basically occupying the school. It's kind of funny. It's funny, but it's not funny. This is what our kids, your kids, are thinking about this stuff. Here you go.
Why should the university be obligated to provide food to people who've taken over a building?
Well, first of all, we're saying that they're obligated to provide food to students who pay for a meal plan here.
But you mentioned that there was a request that food and water be brought in, unless I misunderstood.
To allow it to be brought in. I mean, well, I guess it's ultimately a question of what kind of community and obligation Columbia feels it has to its students. Do you want students to die of dehydration and starvation or get severely ill, even if they disagree with you? If the answer is no, then you should allow basic, I mean, it's crazy to say because we're on an Ivy League campus, but this is like basic humanitarian aid we're asking for. Like, could people please have a glass of water?
But they did put themselves in that very deliberately, in that situation and in that position. So it seems like you're sort of saying, we want to be revolutionaries, we want to take over this building, now would you please bring us food and water? And
Nobody's asking them to bring anything. We're asking them to not violently stop us from bringing in basic humanitarian aid.
They're stopping the delivery of food.
We are looking for a commitment from them that they will not stop it
But
violently.
they haven't stopped it.
Well, I don't know to what extent it has been attempted, but we're looking for a commitment.
and the Grubhub. Why
What
should
are
the
Vlad's
university
next steps?
be obligated to provide food?
Are you kidding me? Can this actually be real? Can this student think she is so entitled, and all those people that are violating school policy, that are rioters, that have taken over a hall, that they deserve to have food and water or anything brought to them? Did you see how she initially went from the school owes it to us to all of a sudden we just don't want them to stop us from bringing it in? Oh, that is our kids. That's what we're sending to school. They think they're so entitled to everything in life, and they're gonna starve in 2 days or 3 days, right? There's another school, I forget where it is, but the students decided we're gonna go on a what do you call it when you stop eating? I forget. We're gonna go on a thing where we're not gonna eat any food until you see it our way. And it's like, in my mind, okay. Go ahead. Don't eat anything. We're on a hunger strike. Go ahead. We're not going to change. You can go ahead and not eat anything for as long as you want. All right. So here's a second video. I think this one's actually 100 times worse than what we just watched. Here, this student is from UCSD. She initially says she doesn't support Hamas because she's going to get arrested if she says she does by Homeland Security. Why would Homeland Security arrest a citizen? So most likely she's not a citizen. And then the speaker up there asks the question, do you support Hamas? And so forth. She won't answer it, and eventually at the end she says she does. She does support Hamas. So anyway, without further ado, let's watch this one. Let me blow it up a little bit.
Hey everyone, this is American Wire. So this student is asked a question. Does she condemn Hamas? Check out what she says.
Yes.
Good evening. Just wanted to say thank you for coming to campus tonight and presenting your point of view. It's always valuable to have two sets of views going on at the same time. Very useful. My name is Jumana Imad Musa Ahmed Al-Bahri, and I'm a student here at UCSD. I was reading your literature. I found that much more interesting than the talk. And I found some interesting things about the MSA, which is an organization that's very active on campus, and it is hosting our annual Hitler Youth Week. You should come out to those events. If you could clarify the connection between the MSA and jihad terrorist networks, because last I checked, we had to do our own fundraising, and we never get help from anyone. So if you could clarify the connection between UCSD's MSA, or if you don't have such information, if you could connect other MSAs on UC's, because the connection wasn't too clear in the pamphlet. Just if you could clarify.
Okay. Will you condemn Hamas here and now?
I'm sorry, what?
Will you condemn Hamas?
would I condemn Hamas?
as a terrorist genocidal organization.
Are you asking me to put myself on a cross?
So you won't. I actually have had this experience many times. You didn't read the pamphlet because the pamphlet is chapter and verse. The main connection is that the MSA is part of the Muslim Brotherhood network as revealed in the documents.
I don't think you understood what I meant by that. I meant if I say something, I'm sure that I will be arrested for reasons of Homeland Security. So if you could please just answer my question.
If you condemn Hamas, Homeland Security will
If
arrest
I
you.
support Hamas, because your question forces me to condemn Hamas. If I support Hamas, I
Well,
look really
if you won't
bad.
condemn Hamas, obviously you support it. Case closed. I've had this experience, I had this experience at UC Santa Barbara where there were 50 members of the Muslim Students Association sitting right in the rows there. And throughout my hour talk, I kept asking them, will you condemn Hezbollah and Hamas? And none of them would. And then when the question period came, the president of the Muslim Students Association was the first person to ask questions. And I said, before you start, will you condemn Hezbollah? And he said, well, that question is too complicated for a yes-no answer. So I said, okay, I'll put it to you this way. I'm a Jew. The head of Hezbollah has said that he hopes that we will gather in Israel so he doesn't have to hunt us down globally. For it or against it?
For it.
Thank you. Thank you for coming and showing everybody what's here.
That was like unbelievable, her answer. That
That is unbelievable. Can you believe that? She said she supports it. The speaker was right. You cannot get 99.9% of these supporters to say they support it, because they would be terrorists, and these people are terrorists. If you won't say no, that you don't support Hamas, you only can take it one way, that you do support Hamas. No answer is still an answer. If you believe in the Quran, if you believe in the Bible, do you believe in the Bible? I can't really say because I'm in an Arab country and they'll either arrest me or put me to death because I was a Muslim, but now I'm a Christian. That's death by default right there in a Muslim country. In the United States, hey, I was a Muslim, but now I'm Christian. Nobody cares. Nobody cares, right? And that's the difference between a theocracy where religion is running a government and a free society like this one in America. That's between you and your maker, you and God, Our lineages, Christianity, Judaism, and Islam are all come from the same founding father, if you want to say, Abraham. The difference splits off there based upon the sons of Abraham, who went where and what did they start. And then you have Jesus Christ, which is unrecognized by the Jewish faith. You have Jesus Christ, who is basically a prophet on the side of Islam. And then you have the Christians who believe Jesus Christ was God, the Son of God, and more than just a prophet. And that's a defining line, and that's what splits us all apart from each other. The sons of Abraham and what you believe as somebody from Islam or from Christianity or from Judaism. That's the split. We probably have a lot more in common than we have uncommon, and why we can't just get along, it's amazing. But as I talk about that, there's two sects, just like in Christianity. We have Catholics, Orthodox, Lutherans, Protestants, and so forth. on the Christian side, which all kind of seem to get together for the most part, or trusting because we all believe in one Jesus Christ and God, as opposed to Islam, who has the Sunni and the Shia, and they're actually fragmenting to a certain aspect more, and you can see that because Iran is Shia, I believe, and Saudi Arabia is Sunni, and they are the two, if you want to say it, the two big powers right now in the Middle East, and always have been the two major powers in the Middle East. There's going to be a breaking point someday on that, and hate to say there's going to be a holy war, but there's most likely going to be a holy war, and it's not going to be between the Christians and the Muslims. It's going to be between the two Muslim sects. But anyway, there you have it. All right, so anyway, that was kind of weird, right? Where she said, yeah. And unfortunately, a lot of these protesters you see, that's where they are. They're just like her. They're not willing to say yay or nay, but when you don't say nay, say no, I'm not a supporter of them, that means you are. You're a supporter. Oh, dark money. We talked about that. I'm going to bring this up real quick. Talked about dark money a little bit. And so this is what basically dark money is. I just told you that. A lot of it's being funneled from these large organizations that accumulate and bring money in, and then they disseminate it to these other organizations and group. This 1630 fund is huge too. It's out there, and it sends out a lot of money to different organizations. A lot of them, in my opinion, are probably these dark black organizations that not physically black, but dark money organizations, like it says right here, that the money kind of just disappears, and you don't really know where it's going or how it's being spent out there. So scary. These things have been around for a long time. I think in the United States, we need to come to a realization that we need to have a second look at a lot of these organizations. And unfortunately, with the current government in place, the Democrats, Biden, the left, the communists, the socialists, whatever you want to call all of these people and organizations, they're not going to do the proper work of going through these and investigating them. We need to get rid of a lot of them. They need to be determined one way or another. All the money that's going through these organizations has to be followed. It's got to be tracked some way or another to these dark organizations, if that's where it's going, or those organizations that can't show where the money's being spent through the organizations they give have to be held accountable for that money. How did all these tents, how did all these signs that were printed that you found all over across America that were exactly the same that were found in the UK, where did all these signs come from? Who's paying for all these things? There's talk about some of the students and these organizers and so forth getting paid money to prop up these things in these areas at these colleges and universities and on our streets. Where does all that money come from? Who's paying for that? Who's footing the bill? It's coming from these large organizations to these smaller ones, and then it just disappears. That's got to stop. We got to figure out where that money's going. We have an election coming up here pretty quick. It's going to be interesting to see. I'm still not totally sure. I think I made comment about it some time ago about Biden actually not making it to the election. Sorry about that. We're not closing it. Biden not making it to the election, I think there's still a good possibility of that a black horse or a white horse, whatever you want to call it, on the Democratic side is going to come riding out of somewhere and show up at the last minute. There's talk about it happening in June. I think that might be a little early. Not exactly sure when the Democrats are doing their it's in Chicago, their convention, but there's going to be something there that's going to kind of turn the negative from positive, I think. And it's not going to be Biden, but that would probably be the best time to bring that person or that thing or whatever is going to be their savior out of the darkness and into the light. Especially if a bunch of people initially show up in Chicago to protest, and then all of a sudden Biden's gone and a white horse comes and rescues that party. So something to think about and look at. These riots, these Palestinian Hamas protests, I think they're kind of slowly being figured out by the American people and by these different organizations. Even the propaganda news can't hide it forever like they did the Black Lives and Antifa stuff from several years ago. But I wouldn't put it past the Democrats, the communists, really, not Democrats, the communists, from creating something that will postpone or stop or slow the election down. I don't know. I don't think they're going to get Trump in jail or prison before the due date. So Trump, I still think the election's wishy-washy with everything about, voter mail ballots and people going to be able to collect other people's ballots and all that. I think that's still up in the air who actually wins our election, believe it or not. Even if Trump is 40 or 50 points ahead, I don't think there's a guarantee that Trump still wins the election. I just don't, because the Democrats are gonna test that line, may test that line, and say, well, if we're losing big and we cheat big, and the people go crazy, are they going to bring guns out and stuff? Well, that just gives us a reason to crack down on them and shut everything down. That could happen too. I would not put that past the Communist Party. I'm not calling them Democrats anymore. The Communist Party. I just wouldn't put it past them. That's how tyrants stay in power, like them. That's how they stay in power. If Trump gets into office, what is the first thing Trump needs to do? He's got 4 years. He needs to disband the FBI. He needs to disband the Department of Justice. He needs to disband the IRS, disband the EPA, disband all these organizations and reconstitute them. Kind of like what Reagan did with the air traffic controllers back in the 80s when they went on strike. Same thing. Reconstitute. Get rid of them all, close everything down, maybe change the names of these organizations, and restart them from scratch. Get rid of them. Clean house. Really clean out the swamp. It might mean shutting down the government for 30 days to 60, 90 days, but hey, think of all the money we'll save. Right? Think of all the money we'll save. Bring the National Guard online if you need to for a short period of time. Bring on law enforcement. Give them the extra money so their people can work overtime and support what needs to be done here, law enforcement-wise, throughout the country. But serious things to consider. The Department of Education. I was thinking about shutting that down, but at this point, I think it's the key ingredient to reorganizing our community, our colleges and universities, and our education system throughout the country. So finding the right person to go in there and to tell colleges and universities, we're coming in and we're doing an audit. We need to see every penny that's coming in from all these organizations throughout the world to you, who they are, what they are, and how you're spending all this money. We need to look at every organization, every student organization and non-organization on your campus. And we're going to do a background investigation and search out who and what these people are. And we're going to clean house. And we're going to start taking tenure from teachers. We're going to give strict guidelines as to what can and cannot be taught through the curriculum that you create. If you go outside that boundary and we hear about it, you are subject to termination. Boom. There you go. Student loans. colleges and universities have raised their tuitions anywhere from 3 to 20% a year, depending on the college and university. Guess what? We're slashing that by 50%. So a student coming to your school, Columbia, if you're charging $60,000 a year for tuition and housing and all that, you're going to get $30,000. That's it. You're going to have to find ways to support these students. Student populations are going to grow at all these schools. That's what I would do. Same with public schools, K through 12. We'd go in there and we would definitely look at a lot of these schools and high schools and school districts throughout the country and look at what they're teaching and how they're teaching it. This is the criteria. This is what you're going to teach for our basic education throughout the country. And your funding from the federal government is going to be based on what you're doing and how you're doing it. We're going to clean it up. We got 4 years to do it, and it's going to happen fast. So that would be my recommendation to Trump if Biden or some other communist stays in office in the White House. Good luck on any of that. We are sunk, we're done, and we're going to sink fast. But that's it, folks. I think we've hit everything as far as this goes this week. You may not have liked what you heard or what you saw, but I think you got a lot of information. We need to crack down on these organizations. I showed you the list. Maybe I'll pop it up real quick one last time. I don't know if I showed you the complete list, right? I'll show you the complete list of these organizations. But as you see, kind of like right here, here's the short list. I don't know if I said it on this version, but all the purple ones are the ones that I kind of linked to who's funding what's going on right now, whether it's a lot or a little bit, funding and or organizing and running some of these protests at the colleges and universities. You can find a lot of it through these organizations. I'm sure there's more. And here are a continued list of other left-leaning propagandists, organizations out there that I think the Department of Justice, the FBI, and the IRS need to take all those extra agents and go through all of these. You think you're done? No, there's more. This is a short list. Needs to go through all of these. What do we do with the attorneys and all that other stuff? Good question. But I think as the government, we can go to the courts and probably, if we have evidence, we can ask them to cease and desist and close down and provide documentation that we need to verify their legitimate corporations, companies, 501Cs, and so forth. And freedom of speech only goes so far. I think the Founding Fathers put that in place for a reason. We want freedom of speech, freedom of the press. We want you to be able to redress the government in our First Amendment rights. But at the same time, we need to be able to have ways of correcting those that have taken the wrong direction. People like George Soros and some of these other organizations, the Ford Foundation and all that. Ford? Is it Ford? Yeah, I think the Ford Foundation is one of the... It's not on this list, but it probably should be on this list. Rockefeller Group is who I was thinking about. Organizations like that need to be tracked. We need to see their books. We need to figure out who's running these organizations, what they're supporting, and how that works upline from there. Who's giving these guys money, and which a lot of it ends back into politicians' pockets and support. Which then politicians are supporting the major donors to them that get them reelected, and not the people who they're supposed to represent. That needs to stop. These PACs groups need to be totally reined in and redone, if not totally abolished. It's really affected our government. It's allowed outside governments to send in money to these organizations and then hold leverage over our politicians and people. That needs to stop. Politicians who are using their information to buy stocks and bonds, which is illegal, needs to be prosecuted. And people like the Bidens, which I'm sure they're not the only family to do it. You could probably throw the Clintons in there as well, selling their position in government and so forth to other governments and so forth for political power and stuff. That's corrupt. That needs to stop. We got a lot of work to do, and it needs to get done quick before this country is sacrificed to the wolves and to the communist countries like China and Russia and Iran and those countries that are taking advantage of our loopholes that are out there. They know them and they're using them to their benefit, and we just got to stop it. We just have to block it off. Websites like TikTok, well, I agree with the banning is probably good. They'll just pop up another one to replace it and do the same thing that they're doing now. So to ban like TikTok is probably no big deal, because they'll just find another method to do the same thing. So we have to find the gap to stop that type of propaganda coming through those channels and nip it in the butt. We just have to figure out ways to do it. And I'm not sure what that is at this point, but there's a lot of people out there smarter than me that could work on all these issues, because I can't do them all by myself. So does that mean I'm running for president? No. No way, Jose. No, I don't want that job. I think somebody like Trump, I may not necessarily like him personally. Who else in this country could go through what he's gone through over the last 12 plus years and still be fighting? I like DeSantis, but I don't know if he could withstand the attack until we get things kind of flipped around. And I think Trump is probably the one, if he actually takes action this time to clean the swamp rather than respond after the fact to the actions by the swamp taken against him. He needs to be a lot more aggressive if he gets in office these next 4 years. But I'm not even sure he's going to get there. So anyway, what's plan B if he doesn't? Something happens to him between now and then, which is highly likely. Saul Alinsky, rules for radicals. Anything's okay as long as you win, basically, is what he says. With that said, we're done. Next week, I might talk about the different aspects of Islam. You have the Shia and the Sunni, and how that in and of itself, I don't know if that'll be the next World War III. Probably not the World War III, but it could escalate into a nuclear conflict, and could be the next big war, I think, coming up here. It could be in the next 20 years or less. So, and in the background, the little smiling Chinese people sitting in the back, Chinese government communists, sitting back there just waiting and watching all this little stuff happening before they make their final move. China's still there. They're lurking. They're using Russia right now in the Ukraine. They're using Iran right now against us in this area and against the Jews. They bought up all the minerals, the rare minerals that makes all our lithium batteries. So they're going to control us there. They have all our manufacturing, so everything made is going to be made there. And the world is just sitting back and letting it happen. They just don't know what's coming. The world just does not know what's coming. Eventually China will pull the trigger, and after we've killed and destroyed ourselves to some aspect, they'll be the only man left standing. And I think that might be their goal. Pushing all the little switches and triggers, getting everybody else to do their wars and fights while they just sit back and relax. And that's one thing the Chinese are. They're very patient. And they've always been that way. All right, with that said, we're done for today. We'll see you next week. Have a great week and stay out of trouble.